I'll call this meeting of the Joint Conceptual Workshop for August the 28th, 2025. Call this meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. Planning Commissioners Marcia Allen.
Present.
Jimmy Franks, not yet. Roger Lindsay is here. Michael Orr.
Present.
Nick Mann.
Here.
Commissioner McLemore.
Present.
Commissioner Williamson. Present.
That's an entrance right there.
And Alderman Peterson.
Here.
And Mayor Moore, not yet. Alderman Potts, Alderman Berger, Alderman Caesar. Alderman Blanton, not yet. Alderman Barnhill,
Here.
Alderman Brown, and Alderman Baggett.
Present.
All right. We have tonight one item on the agenda. It's a good item. And in the interest of moving things along, we would like to wrap this up, somewhere close to 6:30. So this is item 1, discussion of an Envision Franklin Plan amendment, proposing an amendment to the Columbia Avenue between 5 Points to Folks Street special consideration to allow additional height for a future development located at 926 Columbia Avenue. I'll start with a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is proposing effectively 3 changes to the existing special consideration. First, that the height allowance along Columbia Avenue be amended to be 3 stories, up from 2 as is listed in the current special consideration. That the height allowance interior to the site be amended to 4 stories, up from 3 as is currently listed in the special consideration, and that the height allowance along Plaza Street adjacent to the police station be amended to 3 stories, up from 2. And that is currently not in the special consideration, but it is in place for all neighborhood mixed-use parcels within the Mack Hatcher Loop. So that would be added to this special consideration to allow for additional height along Plaza Street. Staff is currently not supportive of the amendment, believing that there's not justification for 2 of the 3 requests. This site was viewed as a transition zone to the less dense and shorter in height CAO2 overlay zoning district, and the current special consideration reflects that. However, staff does believe that amending the Plaza Street height allowance is appropriate because currently there is a disconnect between the general neighborhood mixed-use height restriction and what is allowed along Plaza Street in the zoning ordinance for the CAO1 overlay district for specifically along Plaza Street. Staff also does have concern about the conceptual height of the structure along Columbia Avenue. The submitted materials show a varied first floor heights for the building in order to maintain a consistent roof line throughout the topography change of the site. The materials show that the first floor height on the northern side of the building is 29 feet and 10 inches in height, which is less than 6 feet below the 2-story height maximum, including roof, in the CAO2 overlay district located to the south, which has a maximum height of 35 feet. The large variation causes a portion of the structure to be approximately 53 feet tall and 3 stories, which is the same total height as the proposed 4-story hotel that is interior to the site, as indicated in the submittal. So those are a bit of staff's concerns. We're looking for some feedback regarding specifically those 2 height allowances, the interior to the site being up to 4 stories, and the Columbia Avenue mixed-use structure being 3 stories in height, up from 2, and just the overall height of that 3-story structure along Columbia. The applicant is here as well, and they would like to go through their presentation and can give you more information, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Okay, thank you. Applicant.
All right, thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm Mike Hathaway with 906 Studio Architects. Happy to be able to present to you our thoughts on this development. Let's see if I can get forward here. So our site, as you know, is on Columbia Avenue between Plaza and Folks, and also in front of Acton Street. It's one of the largest leftover spaces in downtown, and is ripe for development. And we believe that what we're proposing is very appropriate for this, and I'll try to explain why. As you know, also H.G. Hill is one of the master developers for this, as well as Dortus Partners for the hotel, proposed hotel, and also Horry Smith for the residential. So if you've seen any of the H.G. Hill properties, you know the quality and expertise they bring to a site like this. So we're excited to be a part of that as the design team, and look forward to your consideration tonight. The Envision Franklin currently has this site as a neighborhood mixed use, and we embrace that and have tried to provide that in our plan, and we'll show you that here in a minute. As far as the zoning side, we are CC Central Commercial. We have an overlay of Columbia Avenue Subdistrict 1. It was mentioned earlier by Eric, the text that we're proposing to amend, basically a 3-story townhome on the Plaza Street side, 3 stories of a mixed-use building on Columbia, and then a 4-story hotel in the center of the property. Our site plan is, as you can see, is currently shown. The blue sort of L-shaped building is a proposed hotel. We have faced that against an internal road. We're going to create a street feel with on-street parking and a different pavement pattern for that road, so it makes the connection between Plaza and Folks, and that hotel will face that. On the Plaza Street side, we've got 2-story or 3-story townhomes that'll be a garage under, but all for sale, as the product that's over the Columbia Pike side. On Columbia Pike, we have underground parking, 1 level. Then we have above that retail, ground floor, and then 2 stories of stacked flats and townhomes on that building. And that'll also be for sale. This gives you a little bit of sense of the site, and our client's very excited about providing a lot of trees in this area for both screening and just for quality of life. And he's shown that in the past in other developments that H.G. Hill has been a part of. You can see the darker color in the center. That's the road that we're using to connect between Plaza and Folks. And that's going to be designed as a street-like road with on-street parking and sight lights. That the hotel will face that, with the idea that it's like a walkable street there in the center, and then the connection back to the front. We've got a paseo down the center of that retail building to allow access from the parking to the front of this retail, so it'll still be able to be active on Columbia Pike. This is a general sense of the rendering. As you can see, we've got our 3-story building in the front facing Columbia. That white section is the paseo section in the middle that you can walk through to get from the front to the back, and that's also where you would access the parking. Pedestrian-wise, you would access the parking underneath the building. And then on the left side of that rendering are this initial ideas of what the townhomes could be like facing Folks. Now, just to be clear on Folks, because of the way the grade is on that, we have a 2-story facing Folks Avenue, so we've got the scale that's appropriate to what the street is there now. And on the back side, it's 3 stories, so it's a split level where you can park under the building on the back side is basically taking up grade. So a portion of that building is going to be underground. This is a view of the site and give you a sense of the topo of the property from the northeast corner from the southeast corner to the northwest corner. There's about 22 feet of drop. It's hard to know that unless you're out there, but it's a substantial drop on the site. And we're going to design to and take advantage of that as we build these buildings. And it was explained earlier by Eric that there is that about a 10-foot drop from the south side to the north side along Columbia Pike. And our proposed building, that's the mixed-use building, will take up that grade, that drop in the first floor. Is proposed to do that. Again, gives you some context of where everything is on adjacent to the site. As you know, we're near the Margin District, which I think was approved for a third story that was set back from the top level. So we're looking for something similar to that kind of scale. To give you a general idea of the height that we're seeing as the adjacencies, and I also wanted to show you what we're proposing on our building. On the ends, we're proposing to set back the first part of the ends to give a one-story, and then recess it above the one-story so that there's a transition of scale from the road to the building as we go up and down that street. These are just some general height analysis of what we've done about the properties around us. Police department's up to 46 feet. You know, the public library is 58 feet, so we're in the ballpark of what's in that area, general area. The site sections, while it's hard to read, I don't know if your screens can show it better than mine here, but if you look at the top section, it'll give you an idea of the relationship of the Carter House to our property. It's going to look over our property because of how high up the hill that it is. So we understand the concern about transition and scale, but felt like that there's such an obvious change from Folk Street going up to the Carter House that the hill property that we're looking at is an appropriate place to have 3 stories, and also as an ending to the extension of downtown, which is what we're trying to do to encourage the walkability from our downtown out to this side of the community, the downtown district. Margin District will start that, and we wanted to be part of completing that at the other end. Pedestrian connectivity is extremely important. We want our community, our development, not only to be a destination, but we also want it to be connected to the downtown, and encourage both residents and visitors to our community to come down and experience this. That's a big reason why we've got retail as well as restaurants. We expect this to be a very energetic, energized space, and hope that we'll be able to create that with not only the retail and restaurant, but also the hotel. The intention of having the hotel there is for a lot of reasons. One is when you consider the Carter House and the new visitor center that's coming along there's going to be a lot of activity in that area, and we look to see this hotel being able to support that activity and be a sort of a starting point for people to come to our community, be there, and go out to different visiting, visible locations nearby. Some of the character images of what we're using as guides for the architecture, but we sure, in our renderings, you can see that the intent is to be supportive of and respectful of the historic downtown that we've already got. This is a view down Columbia Avenue looking south, and give you a sense about what that could look like in the future. Part of the other reason for asking for a 3-story building is, if you look at downtown Franklin, we've got several 3-story buildings in downtown already, but the street is only two lanes. On Columbia Pike, it's 3 lanes and much wider setbacks. So we believe that the higher elevation, the higher height of the building will help to encourage and create that outdoor space, the outdoor room that is the streetscape along there. Some of the renderings that we've done, and again, this is not final design. We're starting from the beginning, trying to get some support on these Envision Franklin amendments, but in our ideas that we feel like we're going to create a beautiful edge along Columbia Pike. Again, putting the parking under will help us clean up that side and have less parking on site. And we're taking advantage of that because of the slope below. And then the use of townhomes along both Plaza and Folks will be a great transition to the neighborhood behind us. And then there'll also be a great barrier to the hotel. You know, that 4-story hotel, while it might seem tall, it's also very shielded by these townhomes. If you look back at that cross section, when you're standing on Plaza or you're standing on Folks, the height of the townhome and the slope of the roof are going to limit your visibility of that hotel from the adjacent properties. So we believe that it's isolated and sort of insulated from those exterior streets, and part of the reason that we want to line those streets is to create that walkability in this community. This upper right-hand side of the view, that gives you a little bit of sense about what we're trying to create with that interior street coming through the community. So using pavers or some other type, different street type, that you're going to be able to see that it's like a street, internal street, and having that hotel facing it will give it an edge that'll make it, again, much more walkable. Then another view of that hotel side. So coming back to the beginning, we would love your thoughts on what we're proposing. Love your insight. We believe that what we're asking is an appropriate request for this site, and believe that what we'll create ultimately will be something we can all be very proud of. So I look forward to your thoughts and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, anybody have comments or questions?
I want to give the committee an opportunity. Thank you for recognizing me, Roger. I have just a few quick, brief comments.
Please.
I'm excited by the opportunity for sale homes, assuming the townhomes will be for sale, not
That's right.
rent. I don't love the 4-story hotel, but I want to hear from my colleagues here to see what they think. And most importantly, when I look at slide 19, which is one back from this, that aesthetic concerns me. It looks a little bit courtyard-ish, which, with all due respect to the people from Courtyard, I don't feel like that fits the character of this particular neighborhood. So aesthetically, I'd like to see that building look a little differently. The rest of it, I think, aesthetically is pleasing. And then maybe my final concern would be, given the proximity of the retail, and I'll stay for just a minute on the retail piece, I'm very concerned about the retail building being too close to Columbia Avenue. There is another building just on the other side of the police station that I drive by, and I still feel to this day, I wasn't a part of this body, but I feel like it's too close, and it discourages walking, I believe, because the sidewalk feels like it narrows. With a 3-story building right like that on Columbia Avenue, I worry about the width of the sidewalk. I know we have ordinances and guidance for that. I think aesthetically, it's different than the width that you need to be away from the moving traffic like you have up and down Main Street.
Sure.
Because you've got the cars that are there, which create a natural slowing pattern. Columbia Avenue at that point doesn't have that.
Right.
So perhaps as we look at this, if there's an opportunity to give additional relief off of Columbia Avenue, that would be a request I would have. And then the final piece, I understand we're still very much in the concept phase, but I think that I'm not the only one that would say if there's some way to get a retail grocer or some food service provider, even if it's not a full grocery or a market of some sort, we have developed, I think, a quite interesting walkable neighborhood. Unless you want to walk to go get your groceries or grab a quick bite to eat that you're carrying home with you. So I would love to see that retail location be attractive to somebody that could sell food and sundries.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger.
Can I make a quick comment about the setback? We agree. I think we all know that the building, the First Bank building, is a little close,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't want to design it that close.
Okay.
We want it to be very walkable and maybe even energized with some restaurants that have outdoor seating on there as well. So agree with that.
I like those images on outdoor seating, and I didn't see it on the drawing, but I think whether you're going to activate the back side or the front side of the building would be interesting to me as well. Thank you, Roger.
Okay, yes.
Yes, this property it's been surrounded by African American neighbors, that the neighborhoods were established after the Civil War all around. So we definitely want to pay homage and respect and have a gateway that reflects that, because from Columbia Avenue going into Natchez, I mean, it's an opportunity to do something really, really nice and very, that would make it important for people to know that this is a historic district. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places, and this is a really good opportunity for us to do something to give respect and homage to the Natchez district, which has lost so many homes due to gentrification. So we want to make sure that that's part of this plan as we move forward.
Okay. Alderman, Commissioner
I was
Allen.
going to wait to the end, but I can't do it. So
ahead.
that was one of the things that I was going to say, that you'd mentioned every landmark in this area except for historic Natchez Street. And so one of the things I want to say, and not so much, yes, historic Natchez Street, but my concern is, because I grew up, Acton Street was one of my stops on the way to my parents, to the home that I eventually ended up growing up in. But I was very concerned and surprised that you guys got the variance to have the parking behind the hotel. Very surprised and disappointed. Wasn't able to come to that meeting because I was going to speak against that. I think that's a big mistake. You're saying that this is going to be a vibrant area, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure this is going to be well designed and all of that. My concern, one of my concerns, and I'll start with that, is the fact that with all the parking, there are going to be people living behind that. Franklin Housing Authority has been there since the 50s, 40s, whenever. All this parking behind that, intensive in and out, very vibrant, lights from parking. I'm sure they're going to be screening, but lots of people behind there. People will live behind there in the Franklin Housing Authority on Short Court, and then some people that live actually on Acton. But then behind there is historic Natchez Street, okay? And I will say I own land that's going to be looking. And then we go with the high, you want to build 4-story. There'll be people living there that will be able to see that. Okay, definitely against that. So part of that selfish, but part of it's from the fact that I grew up and played there. So we got to acknowledge there are people that will be living. Yes, we're all for developing, and extending and for all of that. People live there. That's one thing. But with the vibrancy of putting the hotel in the middle and all of that, we just got to acknowledge that this will affect people who are currently live there, who have lived there. So yes, progress and all of that, but we just got to acknowledge that when we're building and we're asking for these variances, and Envision Franklin was thought about, and you know this, Mike, because you were here, not only for the new people coming, but also for making sure that those who currently live here are protected. And so there was some thought put into these. And so, like I said, I'm already just very concerned about that parking behind that. When we're looking at this concept, that's something that really concerns me. I have a problem with this, 4 stories here, 3 stories here. Yeah, so I just have, there are more, and I'll hush, but I'll let everybody else speak, but I'm concerned.
If you don't mind, Roger, do you mind if I say something
Sure,
real quick?
go
I just
ahead.
wanted to say it. I meant to say what you were talking about, Alma and Marcia, about the connection to Natchez Street. It was on my list. We're setting aside the front corner. If you look at the rendering here on the upper left, we're setting aside that front corner to tell the story and be the entrance to that civil rights walk back to Natchez Street. And I know that our client's very interested in making that a good story. We need help from you guys to make sure we're telling the story correctly, but there is that intention. Relative to Acton Street, I know at one time it was basically an alley for the H.G. Hill grocery store. And there's a large tree row there, and I think most of those units back up to that tree row. So our client is very interested in making sure it's a soft and appropriate connection to whatever happens there. So, thank you.
Commissioner Williamson.
Yeah, I think looking at this, I'll comment on the hotel first. When you look at the hotel from Columbia, that 4th story, it's like, oh, okay, it's going to be tucked back there. But that was my thought too, is that where that backs up, it's single-story residential, and while it might work from Columbia side, I don't think it's going to work too well from looking from residential back towards there. So it works from one way, it doesn't the other. So it has to work from both for that to for me to be in favor of that. When you look at the townhomes on Folks, I think tucking that garage underneath, I think is very creative use of the grade, because especially on the street level, you're keeping to 2-story, more, typical residential. Going to Columbia Avenue, I think the scale of this I'm concerned with, just kind of with the height, it's not quite being pushed back. And especially, I think when you go closer towards, into town near the police station, some of those townhomes, well, it's maybe debatable there. I think it's maybe a little more appropriate to have a 3-story townhome. But as you kind of go down this, it really transitions. You're starting to get some more historic house, and I know some of the Carter houses and everything on higher elevation, but when you're driving down there, you don't really perceive the overall of the elevation. You're perceiving everything at eye level. So I think that would just be, it just seems too massive, especially when you look at what's across the street. You have some single, like AutoZone, it's single story. They have a taller parapet. And then I know kind of what's happening up on Margin and everything. I think it's down the street, so the scale's a little different, and it's almost like that the site is almost split on height appropriateness. It's like right in the site, so just and I think that's about comments I have.
Commissioner Orr?
Question and then comment. What width sidewalk are you showing on along Columbia? Is that 10, 15 feet, or
I remember what we.
it looks pretty wide in the rendering? Okay, it's pretty wide.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
4-foot planters and a 10-foot sidewalk.
Okay, so decent width there. A little concerned about how close that building is to Columbia, and would really like to see that 3rd floor being set back a little bit to open it up a little more. But other than that, I see where you're going with the heights and locations, and really have no concern with the rest of it.
Yeah, I just share the same concern. I don't know. I like the setback of the 3rd story. I think that's a really creative potential solution there. Because I think whether it's 2 stories or 3 stories on the retail, I think it just appears so close. And I think for me to figure out the hotel piece, it would be really helpful on a lot of the renderings and the pictures. The vantage points are always from Columbia or some of these other streets. I think the vantage point, rendering from the backside for us to get to look at. Because I'm just on Google Maps and kind of dropping in there, and it looks like they would be looking right in at almost the 1st story of the hotel, and you got 3 more on top of that. But maybe that's deceiving. That would be really helpful to see, so I can make a better decision there.
Okay.
But I also want to say this is a really important site, and I'm really excited that you all are bringing us something. I think we've waited a long time to see something, and so I'm really excited to partner and see what we can do.
Great.
Mike, did you have something?
I did. Yes.
Okay, go.
Thank you. This is, people have been wondering what's going to happen for a long time. So this is, thank you for bringing this. And I was with a group of downtown neighborhood association folks on Monday and heard from them. I think generally there's from all the neighbors, probably an excitement of something happening here. So that's good. There's, in a lot of areas of town, maybe that's not the case. So I think there's something here. I think the height on, first of all, to Alderman Caesar's point, the hotel type, that was one thing that I've heard is yes, does that fit the character of the downtown area? Is that something, that's probably more of a development plan discussion than now with just the height. The new thing that I saw is and I appreciate you putting in there, is the picture going south on Columbia and what that 2-story to 3-story on Columbia does. And that would be that exception in Vision Franklin. I believe Margin District did get the 3rd recessed. And so being consistent I understand also this property has special limitations as well. So I really would like to see that mirrored to some degree on this, if not reconfiguring possibly even to make it so that this front section kind of wraps down it's not Park Street. What is the P?
Folks.
Plaza. Knew it was a P. Plaza. You know, because those three-story townhomes there seem to be shorter than even the retail building on the front. So some sort of configuration there that might make the economics work. And I agree with Commissioner Allen that we got to be respectful of what's happening behind the hotel or the fact that I have to say that it's behind the hotel. I think we just need to really look at that really closely. Final thing is the Folk Street. If there's a way to get those roofs, that's right up next to the battlefield. So making sure that all fits architecturally with the battlefield and the other homes as you go down Folks, which we don't want to is, 2.5 story or feels like 2.5 story all the way down, and then you get to the neighborhood and it's 1 story, and it just feels like a big disconnect. So a transition on Folk Street to similar size houses. I think there's something here. Again, like I said, I think the community is not against something happening here.
Right.
I think it's going to be. I think this is just the first step in that feedback and getting to something that they'll support.
Good. So Alderman Baggett made a comment about the view looking down Columbia. So you had a slide that was titled Site Context Rendering, and that's a view down Columbia.
Oh, you must have been faster.
So, right there.
Yep.
There's something wrong with that. Now, the one thing I want to be careful of is that we know we want to be stepping down as we come out of downtown, and so we dealt already with the Margin Street project, and we agreed that if we step back a little bit on the 3rd story, it fits a little better. This thing doesn't look like it fits, and part of it is, on one hand, we want to put stuff a little closer to the street. On the other hand, when the police station was built, it was built far away from the street.
Right.
And so we have to deal with the fact that stuff's already been built, and it looks like instead of stepping down as you go down south down Columbia Avenue, all of a sudden you got a 3-story something there. And so I'm wondering if something Margin Street related, South Margin related, where there can be a little step back, would make it less imposing. And also maybe a few feet further back off the street. That was just one of the reactions. I don't want us to be in a situation where when we're trying to achieve a little bit of a step down, that just because 2 stories is permitted, let's ask for 3, or just because 3 is permitted, let's ask for 4, and put the commission in a bind.
Sure.
Let's because there are features of the site, 22-foot slope, that you have to carefully craft what goes into that site to make it look less imposing, look like there's less mass, yet at the same time accomplish what you need to accomplish on that site. So
Right.
those are my comments.
Good. Thank you.
Commissioner Williamson.
Just real quick, I'm looking at plan page 6, and I'm wondering too, if that 3rd story is pushed back more on the police station side, and then where you have that kind of walk area that goes through the middle, what if, to the left, that becomes 2-story, and then it also gets pushed back? Because one thing I was looking at is just south of this, you also have the Lots House, and then you have Carter's Court, and that's there's stuff there. It's really scaling down, and like you were saying, we need a little bit more transition.
Yes.
Mike, I just didn't know if you had any additional information about the long-term plans for Franklin Housing Authority behind an Acton Street, because I know we've talked at staff level before that we've heard there's more long-term plans to redevelop, but I didn't know if you had any information on building height from FHA at all.
We've had conversations with Scott Black. I think he's the chairman of the Housing Authority now. And there's a plan that they had on their website that he said is no longer accurate and not part of their future plans. So I don't think they have any direct plans for that site.
That's
Right now, I
helpful for
understand
us
they're
to
doing some
know.
renovations of some of the homes in there, but that's all I think they have plans for.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any final comments? I hope we've given you something you
Yes.
can work with.
No, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, is there other business? Seeing none, any announcements? Okay, we will adjourn then.